The file opens with a photograph. It is not the image of a monster. It is the portrait of a rising star. He has a sharp jawline, a tailored suit, and a smile that disarms you before he even speaks a word. In the mid-1970s, he looked like a young executive bound for the boardroom or a charismatic politician destined for a governor's mansion. He was selling a product, trust, and everyone bought it. But behind the piercing blue eyes and the pristine facade lay a dark, calculated enterprise. His name was Theodore Robert Bundy. He did not just kill, he operated a sophisticated, coast-to-coast machinery of death. This is the blueprint of the ultimate deception. Every successful operation relies on a proven methodology. Ted Bundy's business model was rooted in a profound understanding of human psychology. He knew that society had a blind spot. People believed that evil looked evil. They expected the villain to hide in the shadows, unshaven, aggressive, and terrifying. Bundy stepped directly into the light. His mobile headquarters was unassuming, a tan 1968 Volkswagen Beetle. His tools were not just weapons, they were props. A fake plaster cast on his leg, a sling on his arm, a pair of crutches dropping to the pavement. He weaponized empathy. He would struggle to load books into his car, wait for a kind-hearted young woman to offer a helping hand, and strike. In a fraction of a second, the charming law student vanished. The predator took over, a heavy blow, the metallic click of a missing interior door handle, and the victim was trapped. He didn't just steal lives, he engineered their erasure. By 1974, a shadow began to creep across the Pacific Northwest. Young, beautiful women with dark hair parted down the middle were vanishing into thin air. From university campuses to crowded state parks, the disappearances were flawless. No witnesses, no screams, no forensic evidence. Law enforcement faced an unprecedented logistical nightmare. They were dealing with a ghost. Detectives began compiling data, desperately searching for a pattern in the chaos. The investigation yielded only fragments. A witness remembered a handsome man asking for help. A girl recalled someone driving a tan VW Bug. And a name was whispered across Lake Sammamish, Ted. The police built a composite sketch. They released it to the public. Thousands of tips poured into the precinct. Among them were calls from Bundy's own girlfriend, his friend, and his psychology professor. They all looked at the sketch and saw the rising star. But the investigators buried the leads. Why? Because the profile didn't fit. The suspect was a law student. He worked on a Republican governor's campaign. He answered suicide hotline calls. The police were hunting a brute. They couldn't comprehend that the CEO of this dark enterprise was hiding in plain sight. But every criminal enterprise eventually leaves a paper trail. Bundy expanded his market. He moved his operation from Washington to Utah and then to Colorado. The map of his crimes was vast. Exploiting the fatal flaw of 1970s law enforcement, police departments did not communicate across state lines. There were no databases. There was only paper, ink, and phone lines. Bundy knew this. He was a master of jurisdictional arbitrage. Then, the flawless machine finally malfunctioned. In August 1975, a Utah Highway Patrol officer noticed a suspicious VW Beetle cruising through a quiet suburban neighborhood in the dead of night. The officer flipped on his lights. Bundy fled, but was quickly cornered. When the police opened the trunk of the car, they didn't find a monster's lair. They found an investigative puzzle. A ski mask, handcuffs, a crowbar, an ice pick, pantyhose with eye holes cut out. Bundy claimed they were everyday items. The police knew they had found a murder kit. The charismatic salesman was finally placed in handcuffs. The enterprise was crumbling. But a mind this restless, this arrogant, does not stay confined for long. What followed was a masterclass in hubris. Bundy was extradited to Colorado to face murder charges. Acting as his own attorney, he demanded access to the courthouse law library. The guards, lulled by his articulate demands and professional demeanor, left him unshackled. It was a fatal miscalculation. Bundy simply opened a second-story window and jumped. He was captured days later, shivering and starving. But the seed of escape had been planted. Months later, he found a weak spot in the ceiling of his jail cell. Shedding 30 pounds to fit through a light fixture hole, he crawled through the ductwork, dropped into the jailer's apartment, and walked out into the freezing snowy night. By the time the guards checked his bed, Bundy was already gone. He boarded a flight to Chicago, took a train to Atlanta, and finally caught a bus to Tallahassee, Florida. The phantom was loose again, and this time he was entirely off the grid. Florida was the final, chaotic chapter of Bundy's dark business. The calculated, methodical predator was gone. What replaced him was a desperate, unraveling addict. The mask had slipped, revealing the rot beneath. On a brutal night in January 1978, he entered the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. There was no charm, there were no props, just sheer, unadulterated violence. In less than 30 minutes, he left 2 women dead and 2 others severely beaten. The flawless operation had descended into a frenzied liquidation. Weeks later, a patrolman in Pensacola spotted a stolen vehicle. It was a mundane traffic stop that brought down the most prolific killer in American history. As Bundy was wrestled to the ground, he looked up at the arresting officer and said, "I wish you had killed me." The long, bloody audit was over. The trial in Miami was a spectacle. It was the first nationally televised murder trial in the United States. Bundy, ever the narcissist, fired his lawyers and represented himself. The courtroom became his final boardroom. He paced the floor. He wore crisp suits. He cross-examined the police officers who hunted him. He played to the cameras, flashing that same disarming smile. But the jury wasn't buying the product anymore. The physical evidence, a cast of his crooked teeth matching a bite mark on a victim, was undeniable. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was death. Even the presiding judge, Edward Cowart, was hypnotized by the dichotomy of the man. As he sentenced Bundy to the electric chair, the judge leaned forward and delivered a chilling final assessment. "It is a tragedy for this court to see such a total waste of humanity. You're a bright young man. You'd have made a good lawyer. I'd have loved to have you practice in front of me. But you went another way, partner." On January 24, 1989, the enterprise was officially shut down. Theodore Robert Bundy was executed by the state of Florida. The file is closed. The tan Volkswagen sits in a museum. The photographs of the charismatic law student are fading. But the terrifying legacy remains. Ted Bundy changed the business of investigation forever. He proved that the most dangerous predators do not lurk in the dark. They walk beside us in the daylight. They shake our hands. And they smile.